Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into some really critical sources, looking at potential shifts in U.S. foreign policy. Specifically, the strategic thinking linked to a possible return of Donald Trump to the presidency. Our mission, really, is to pull out the key insights from the articles and notes you've shared, giving you the core ideas without getting bogged down.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how these sources outline a central set of ideas that kind of rewrite the usual playbook. We're seeing a focus on more assertive U.S. action in global hotspots, a pretty noticeable move away from traditional de-escalation tactics, and while a clear readiness to use stark ultimatums. The materials suggest this isn't just about policy tweaks, it's maybe a different philosophy altogether about global power.
Right, that focus on immediate results you mentioned really sets up this next point from the sources. A renewed directness. We've seen the America First idea, often meaning less foreign involvement, trying to reduce entanglements. But these sources suggest a potential change, maybe a readiness for more direct, decisive action in certain high-stakes situations. What's the thinking behind that shift, according to the sources?
Well, the indication is it might stem from a belief that standard diplomacy is just too slow or maybe even counterproductive sometimes. It looks like a move prioritizing, let's say, quick, tangible outcomes over those long, multilateral talks. So it's less about staying out and more about choosing how and when to jump in directly, aiming for a fast resolution, a different kind of calculation for what counts as a win.
That's a really key distinction the sources are drawing.
Yeah.
And connecting directly to that idea of decisive action, the research points to a big shift around de-escalation. What do they say about this skepticism towards, well, cooling things down, especially with adversaries? That sounds pretty bold.
It does. And this no de-escalation idea, it isn't just about sounding tough. The sources frame it as a strategy. Keep up the pressure, maybe even increase it, until you get what you want. Use it to force concessions or change behavior. That's quite different from traditional diplomacy, which usually tries to lower the temperature to make room for talks. Supporters, the sources say, might see it as showing resolve. Critics obviously warn about raising the risk of confrontation. It's about setting the terms through pressure, not negotiation after things calm down.
Interesting. So less about avoiding conflict, more about dictating the terms almost forcefully.
Yeah.
And I guess that links to how the sources talk about using ultimatums.
Exactly, yeah. The ultimatum slots right into this framework as a key tool. The sources analyze it as, that final demand, something used before to speed things up, project an image of strength. It draws clear lines in the sand, tries to cut through diplomatic deadlock with a stark choice. It's really designed to shape how decisive you appear, pushing others' adversaries or maybe even allies into making quick decisions.
Okay, but using something as sharp as an ultimatum, what about the risks? The sources must highlight those. It feels like a dangerous game.
You're absolutely right. It's potent, but risky. It can definitely come across as highly escalatory. It doesn't leave much, if any, room for compromise or finding middle ground. And if the demands aren't met, the sources warn that could spiral into really serious unintended outcomes, maybe even conflict. Its success, the material really stresses this, hinges on credibility. Do people believe you'll actually follow through? A bluff could just completely backfire.
Right, makes sense. So taking all this together, the directness, the stance against de-escalation, the use of ultimatums, if this approach were actually put into practice, what sort of ripple effects do the sources suggest we might see globally? What could this mean for, the world?
Well, the sources kind of boil it down to three main potential consequences. First, more volatility in those global flashpoints. Imagine a crisis flares up, and instead of trying to calm things down step by step, the immediate response is intense pressure or an ultimatum. Things could escalate very, very quickly. The potential for rapid intensification seems higher.
And what about beyond those immediate crises? Are alliances the global network?
That's the second point. Potentially strained alliances. Allies might feel pushed, pressured to fall in line with more assertive stances. That could really challenge the way countries usually work together in multilateral setups. The sources suggest this might cause some friction, as traditional partners, well, they might not always be comfortable with that kind of approach.
Okay, volatility, strained alliances. And the third point, how does it reshape the bigger picture?
The third area is essentially redefined geopolitical dynamics. Adversaries would really have to rethink how they respond to a U.S. foreign policy that appears more direct, maybe less willing to compromise. This could shift power balances, force other countries to adjust their own strategies. But crucially, the sources always add the caveat. Actual implementation really depends on the specific crisis, how other countries react, and even the dynamics within the administration itself.
Wow. Okay, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to chew on regarding how a major power might engage with the world. It certainly paints a picture of a potentially quite different global dynamic. And ultimately, it leaves you with a really important question to consider. What kinds of new challenges and perhaps opportunities might emerge in a world potentially shaped by a more direct, less conciliatory U.S. foreign policy? Something to think about.